G'day, welcome back to Brupeg. As you know, the generator's in the boat. We're smashing out progress as fast as we can to try and get this generator running. The reason we want to get it running fast is because Birk is fast running out of days on his visa. Our plan is to get him out to Lady Musgrave Island before he has to shoot out of the country on a plane. If we can't get Brupeg to get to Lady Musgrave Island in time, we're going to send him on that boat.
Brupeg was a sunken fishing trawler that was stripped out and ready for the scrapyard. She's just completed a 10-year rebuild that's brought her back to life. With the help of volunteers and funded by our Patreons, community and subscribers, she'll be crewed by passionate people from around the world. If you'd like to be involved and support the project, please consider joining us on Patreon or subscribe to the channel. There's a link in the description below.
There's two ways that we can do these water pipes. The first is like we did when we did the main engine coolant, so you're getting 90-degree bends and straights and then you're TIG welding it all up and you're mucking around. It takes a long time, but it looks quite lovely. That's one option. And the second option is basically getting some welding wire, bending the shape that you need, taking that to an exhaust shop and getting them to bend it out of exhaust pipe. Now it's not perfect because you don't end up with mandrel bends, you end up with what's called a crush bend in the corners. It does reduce the diameter very slightly, but we're going up from 1.25 inches to 2 inch for these pipes, so that's irrelevant, but it also means that we can speed up the process of building these pipes up by about 2 days. So this is my design. The two pipes will run parallel, they'll do a turn 45-ish, they'll go straight and then they'll do a 90 straight up. One pipe will finish about here and we'll do some sort of tube, rubber tube onto this guy here, and then this one here will come up and it'll actually go a little bit higher than this, but it'll finish about here, and then that'll allow us just to do a U coming around like that onto that tube there. Now I do need to put in a header tank as well so that we can have that higher than everything else, so any air bubbles in the system work their way up into the header tank. I haven't quite figured that out yet. I need to go into town and see if I can find a stainless tank that's going to do the job. You know how I said the easiest way to build this would be just to get a single piece of pipe bent up into the shapes that we need? Well, I'll show you where I got to with that. Obviously that's not how it's going to work, so we're going to use this collection of stuff to build pipes. Thankfully this is going to take a lot of time, so that's really cool when you've got a timeline squeeching up behind you. So our two keel cooling pipes, we are putting silicon bends on. There you go. They are terrifyingly easy to put on, so I don't know if they're going to work. We might have to go down one size, which don't know if we can do that. They're 2.5 inch at this end and 2 inch at that end, so they are already helping us reduce the diameter that we need. So we're going to start off with those, then we go to 2 inch pipe, which is going to form the basis of our system all the way up till we get to the very top, where we're going to convert it when we do the little flip over the top there into 1.25 inches. However, what I thought was going to be a rubber hose that does a bit of a U-turn might actually be a right angle, because we have to put a header tank at the top, which we're going to make out of some 5-inch stainless. We're just going to 5-inch stainless tube, and we're going to cap each end with some 3mm plate. It's not pressure vessel because obviously we need to have the curved ends for it to be a proper pressure vessel, but it will be enough to hold 10 psi. We'll pressure test it up to say 30 psi just to be absolutely certain that it's going to survive. We'll do that with water because then we don't have to worry about it exploding when we're testing it. If it holds 30 psi without too much drama, then it's going to be fine for 9 or 10 psi, whatever it is that the radiator cap runs in the system. So that's going to be mounted on the top of one of the pipes, and then it's just going to have a hose bar welded onto the side of it that'll just go down and into the engine. So it should be relatively straightforward to build. Look at that! It's coming together! Normally I'm not worried about a couple of dags. What's a few dags between friends? But when it comes to destroying water pumps, I take that very seriously. Fresh cut piece of pipe. Now the issue is, if you can see right on that edge, you've got a bit of a dag there. It's going to be essentially called a burr sometimes, or a dag if you're a Kiwi. So that there could theoretically come loose, probably take a fair bit of work, but that could come loose, go through the water pump and destroy it. So easiest way to get them out is either with one of these guys for light stuff. So there you go, you can see the end of it. It's got this little thing that can spin around, and you can work your way around it. A deburring tool, you can work your way around it. These are great for things like cast iron, aluminium, anything that's sort of light and soft, but they're a bit too not quite strong enough with stainless. So the stainless, we just use a round file and just do that, basically get in there and clean it up. Now you might remember this tool that I built a wee while ago. It's essentially a piece of angle welded to 2 clamps. We can move the clamps up and down, and then by doing so, when you clamp them down tight, you end up with a perfectly aligned join that you can just weld up really nice. With it in place, you can just undo your clamps, like so, probably fall. And you end up with a perfectly aligned piece of pipe, nicely tacked together. Because we've got a couple of days to make up in our timeline, we are tacking it together with MIG rather than TIG. We will TIG it like to finish the job, but we're just MIGging it all together in order to get the shape, and then we'll bring the whole lot out as one piece, and then we'll TIG all of the joints together so that we know that we've got no leaks. Alright, there's the first pipe made. It's not the most complicated pipe in the world, but that's going to come up to a header tank up here. So header tank will be roughly in this area, and then some sort of pipe arrangement going over to this guy in the back here. The second pipe is going to be the tricky one because it comes out of here, comes along following the same line as this one here, so it runs parallel to this one here. Then it's going to do a curve straight into the engine, and then it's got to do a curve up because we're going to fit this original pipe. It's going to go on there and point straight down like so, and then we need to make this guy here join in and do a curve like that, and then pretty much straight away we've got to do a curve like that. So a wee bit of mucking around on this one, but we'll get there. The tricky bit, I think, is going to be basically getting that perfect. So we need parallel on the left hand side of my hand, and then we need to cut it pretty much bang on at 45. Now I don't have a 45 that I can just buy from the shop, so we're going to have to kind of guesstimate it. I think we're right. I did manage to cut a pretty tight radius 45-degree bend using the drop saw. So what I'm thinking is on this one, which is a tight radius 90, I'm going to weld a 1.25 inch hose tail onto there, and that will end up going onto that hose like so. So that gives us our vertical out, and then this guy here will weld on to this end, cut back about here somewhere, but weld onto this end so that we end up with our nice sort of seamless joint. So let's start working those things together. Get rid of that stud because it's going to be in the way, but that is going to basically allow us to pop that right there. Okay, a fending stud cut off using the saber saw so it doesn't spray rubbish all through the engine room. This guy here has been tacked together. You can sort of see that there, just tacked together with a MIG welder. Right, let's get this fitted so we can start figuring out our weird 45-degree bend. Okay, so that is sitting where it needs to. We need to create this parallel pipe, and it's this angle that kind of determines that. So we need to cut this one a little bit shorter, and then weld those together, start creating the pipe on the left-hand side of my arm. Alright, that's our pipe marked like so, so it lines up, and that's it tacked together. And with a little bit of pipe extending it, look at that, we've got 2 pipes. It is time to start joining this together properly. Best thing to do would be to use TIG and a very small tungsten. This gives you an idea of the size difference. So the one on the right hand side is a 2.4 millimeter, so I'm going to show you in the light. The one on the left is a 1.6 millimeter. Now 1.6 is very good for like very fine stuff like thin stainless and so on. This is an aluminium one, that's why the end of it is balled up. So just ignore that. But it gives you an idea of the size difference. You can get a lot more fine control with the little one. However, our TIG set has been gutted. The last remaining ceramic cup that I have broke this morning. I do have a nice Pyrex gas lens cup, however the center is missing, the O-rings broke, the little thread part fell out of it, and the mesh is gone, so that's not going to work. So I'll put this together using MIG. Now it's possible, but it's definitely not my preferred way of doing it because it's much easier to get leaks if you're doing MIG welding on thin pipe like this. There's guys out there that can do it all the time, like exhaust shop people do it all the time without getting leaks. I'm not as good as them when it comes to thin pipe MIG welding, but we'll give it a shot because it's the only thing we can do. There we go, it's welded. Like I said, it is nowhere near as pretty as TIG welding, but we can make that clean up. So it's just literally a series of high heat tacks. So normally you wouldn't weld this with the amperage that I'm using. I'm using probably 50% more amperage than normal, and I do blip, 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 but I keep it hot the whole way around and just keep it fused. I don't know if that's the best technique, but I saw that actually off a fella on YouTube when he was building hot rod exhaust, and then he linished everything off and made it beautiful so the weld wasn't there. But that's how I've always done MIG on tube. If there's a better way of doing it, I'd love to hear in the comments. Contestant number 2, welded. Right, from a looks point of view, these welds are awful, but I don't think they're going to leak. I say that with my fingers crossed. So I'm going to linish these up because they're pretty gross, so I want them to look pretty on those tubes when we're finished. So let's get them cleaned up and then see what they look like. There we go. They come up quite nice, linished up like that. However, I also realise that these are going to be hot, so I need to wrap these. So none of this matters because it's all going to be buried between something to stop people getting burnt on them. Alright, I don't actually have enough stuff to wrap it, so I need to do a run into town, but this is basically what I need to do to these pipes so that when you put your hand on them and you get burnt because they're nice and hot, you don't when you do it there. What are you doing over there, fluffy dog?
Hey baby. Cutie pie.
Okay, until I do a run into town, I can't carry on with this guy here because I've run out of the wrap, so I'm going to continue with this thing. This is going to be our header tank. Need to slice it off at each end perfectly square. At the moment it's not. It's been cut close to square, but definitely not square. It's a really easy trick to getting a tube with a square perfect line for the tube. I'll show you. On a small pipe you can do this with a single piece of paper, but I've got quite a big pipe, so I've got 2 bits of paper joined up. The way that I join them is by stacking them perfectly level like that and putting the tape across the top. That way you know that they're square to each other. The line across there is perfectly even. It's not going to be bigger at one end than the other. And then you wrap it around the tube. So difficult one-handed, but you basically wrap it around like so, and you get it so that the edges line up perfectly. This one is not lining up perfectly because I'm doing it one-handed, but when the edges line up perfectly and you haven't got the paper on a bit of a weird angle, it ends up with a perfectly level line all the way around, like perfectly square line. Time to plasma these guys out. These are going to be the end caps for our pressure tank. I think for this we'll be using Ghost Riders in the Sky as motivational music. Let's just kick that off. Alright, so these have been cut out. I have gone around and just quickly ground up the edges. You can see it's sort of shiny all the way around the edge. One surface hasn't been touched, it's just whatever the mill finish is. The other is a bit crappy. It's been ground up so that I can weld without any drama. Again, this one's got a bit of paint on. This one's pretty mill scale, like just normal mill finish. But what I want to do is go through with my poly flap disc. This is a fine flap disc, and I'm just going to get these guys to a nice mirror because I want to TIG these into this tube because this is going to be a piece that you see, so I want it to look pretty. I want to tuck these inside the tube slightly and then weld all the way around. So I'm going to clean the tube up before I do that, but I also need something that's going to be a uniform height. So this here fits inside the tube quite nicely. What I'm going to do is sit this on the ground like so, sit this on top like that, and then slide the tube down on top, and then by the time I pull it out I'm going to have that uniform distance, and I'll do that on both ends. We end up with a really beautiful thing to be able to TIG. Shiny side down, because it's the bit that we want on the outside. This one here is just whatever the original finish. It's not cleaned up. I have ground around the edge so I get a nice weld. I've buffed all of this out using this stainless wheel so that we've got a nice surface to weld on. Got it sitting on top of, and you know what? Oh, I know what I need to do. Okay, so it's not quite a perfect fit. So it is down over top to a uniform amount. So what I'm going to do now is just MIG a couple of, say, three points so that it's firm in there. And then the other one is actually a press fit, so the other one will be tight. So that's all good. We can work with that. Let's get this one tacked up, and then we can start TIGging around it. Right. There we go. So you can sort of see what I've done. It doesn't have to be the neatest fit up. It would be nicer if it was neater, but it doesn't really matter. We've pushed it down, I don't know, 6 or 8 mil, something like that, and then we can go around and TIG that, and we end up with a really nice join and a nice sort of looking tank and everything. Went into town, did a run, and you can see our cup runneth over. Ooh, was that a snigger?
It was a snigger.
Oh, was a snigger?
It was a snigger.
All right, as we were then. So half of it isn't touched, half of it is. So what I've done, you can sort of see this half's polished. Not the prettiest welds, but it's all TIGged. I don't think we'll have any leaks. So anyways, around there it's reasonable. Then around this side it's a bit sort of, holy crap, look at that. One thing I want to add to this tank is the original low water level alarm. So you can see on there you've got 2 probes, one at the top, one at the bottom, and essentially if one of them goes dry, this whole lot should be buried in water, and if one of them goes dry, if the level comes down below it, it should set an alarm off, and possibly stop the genset. I'm not 100% sure how it works. It either sets an alarm off and doesn't do anything else, or it stops the genset. But either way, we want to fit this so that we've got that back in the new tank, so it's in the original configuration. To do that, we have this 1/2 inch fitting, which basically screws on there, and we're going to just weld that in the end plate here. So we'll put that halfway down the end plate or something like that. Okay, so we got that mounted in there, and it's basically square because we pushed it down onto these so that we know it's going to be uniform. So I'll weld it on this side, flip it over, weld it on the other side, and that way we're not going to have any leaks. Both sides of this have now been TIG welded together, so there won't be any leaks, because if one side has a pinhole, the other weld on the other side will definitely compensate. So that's what's called double continuous. So continuous weld around both sides. So that's the end that's going to have the sensor in. We flip our job upside down, that'll get welded over here, and the sensor will stick out whatever. I might actually sink it in a little bit to give the sensor some protection. It doesn't matter exactly how much we sink it in. What we do need to do is drill this big hole. So I've put a 3.2mm rivet drill through this centre. So this is a 50mm hole saw that we need to knock in here, and we're going to weld our vertical pipe that goes down to the keel cooling. It's going to be welded into this tank here. Over the back, Jess is finishing up the door. She's recessed in the hinges on the door and on the frame. You can sort of see over the back on the frame there's some recesses, and she's got some spare paint, so she's cleaning up some of the sloppiness on the back of the boat. Making a significant dent in some of the dodgy paintwork that's been sitting on the boat for about a year now. It's kind of nice actually getting it cleaned up and tidy again. Hole drilled, but doesn't quite fit, so we'll kind of make it fit. Alright, so I've got a line here and here, which basically is the orientation that I need to get it in, so it needs to go in that orientation there. So what I'm thinking is, it's going to dangle over like that, so what I'm thinking is I'll just do a quick tack there, and then I can bend it up, take it downstairs, and make sure it's going to be exactly where we need it to be. Alright, there it is in place and lined up on the engine, so it's all square and lovely. So I think we'll go ahead and weld that together now. After that, we're going to do brackets down the bottom here so that this here is firm. I need to do some sort of triangulation and then weld the second pipe to the first using brackets and things like that, so that the whole thing's really rigid. I need to weld this into the tank that we've just made, but I don't want to have all of this ugliness on the back end of it, so I'm going to slice it right down there and then weld this piece only to the tank. Alright, that's been cut off. It's quite clean and lovely. There's no burrs on the inside or anything like that. Just need a hole saw down through here and get that tigged in so that we've got a nice hose tail onto that cylinder. I was going to weld this end on, but I remember I need to do this first, because then I can make sure I've got no rubbish inside. I can clean the tube out. So we'll get this on now, and then we'll get the end put on, the end that has the sensor fitting in it. We don't have a magical selection of sizes on this smaller end of the hole cutting scale. What that meant is this is a little bit sloppy. We can tick that up, that's not a problem, but it's a little bit harder. The trick I sometimes do is when the hole is too big to be able to tack it in is, you can see I've just put 3 blobs of weld there. They look a little messy, but they work as a easy means to sort of hold it, get a tack on, and then we can start aligning it, getting it square. Single tack, now holding it so it can't go anywhere, and now we can just basically tap it left and right, whatever, to get it bang on and square. So it makes it much easier to do your fit up when the fit up isn't perfect. There it is, welded in, so tigged all the way around. Right, now that's in, I've given it a quick buff so it's clean. I have washed all of the rubbish out of this so the tank itself is clean. It's time to weld that end cap in. To position this, we've got our disc with the fitting welded in. I've got this piece of stainless, just going to put that on there, which will make this bit here level to the ground. We can then go and slide this bang on top like that. It's tight enough to sort of stay there, and it's definitely not level. So let's figure out a new way of doing that. All right, one tack over there, so it's held in, but it's definitely not level, but we can go around now and just push it down to the same height all the way around and end up with a horizontal, you know, fitting and everything. Now, the reason why I've pushed this down so much is because it provides a bit of protection for the sensor that's going to be there. So it's, rather than having a sensor just sticking out in mid-air and potentially getting bumped, it's now going to be encapsulated with these sides all the way around it, so it should give it a little bit of protection. Not that it probably needs it, but we'll do it anyway. Right, all measured up. 48 millimeters down, 3 tacks. It's not going to go anywhere. Time to get this welded in. A lot of it happened off camera because it's just too blimmin' hard to try and show it, but it's all polished up, and you can see these little marks at the end here. That's what's called sugaring, and that's what's happened. Basically what's happened is this is a very thin pipe and I've got it hot and I didn't have argon on the back, so you end up with this sugaring. It's not ideal, but won't really affect it. This is all welded up. It should be leak proof. I haven't been able to pressure test it yet, but we think that the welds are pretty good, so if they leak we can also fix it on the engine with coolant in it. It's not the end of the world to weld it like that. I did that with the main engine on a couple of the leaks we had on those pipes and it works fine. So yeah, this part is done. Next part, we need to get some brackets going on these guys so that they can support their own weight. Here we have the two pipes, 63 to 50 millimeter right angle silicon pipe going into 50 mil or 2-inch stainless tube, and then we've got our header coming up to our header tank here, and then our bottom radiator hose over the back there. What I need to do is do a little bracket down in here. You can see where that piece of steel is just by my foot down there. I need to make a stainless bracket that bolts onto that rib that's sort of going across there, and I'll do another bracket back here that sort of stiffens everything up. But I also need to do some sort of support up here that's independent of the motor, so it can't bolt onto the motor. So it has to be something, I don't know what yet, but some sort of leg, maybe a triangulation back down to this pipe or something like that, just so that the pipe itself is really solid and the weight of this isn't going to cause any issues long term. So I've taken one of the pipes out, but what I'm thinking is basically a bracket just like that that'll sit underneath both pipes, so one will weld to each side of this here and it'll weld to like the center of the pipe on the underside. So if you imagine it's up the other way, but this is underneath the pipe, it'll sit about there, one on either pipe, and then you can get a reasonable weld around it. And then we'll just get a bit of flat bar like that, just put it in there so that these sit parallel to each other, so that one will be there, and then you'll have this bracket, this V-bent bracket over this end, and that'll hold those two relatively rigid. And then again, I think we'll do from the header tank up here, we'll probably come down on an angle just to really triangulate it, stiffen it up. It's not the prettiest of solutions. I would have loved to have done it differently, but I need to do something that's going to be pretty robust, I think. That's it with the bracket tacked in place. So you can sort of see where it sits, and you can see how it works. Basically just a bolt. It's only a little pilot hole at the moment, but I'll put a bolt through there, maybe a 10mm bolt or something. That'll be enough to hold that one. We'll have our welded in bracket down here, and then I'm thinking actually using some 2-inch pipe, maybe going from say here down to this pipe here, as like a triangulation to stiffen that whole area up. Alright, brackets are all welded together. Now it's time to figure out this triangulation piece that I keep talking about. Rather than use 2-inch, I'm thinking I'm just going to use a piece of this 1-inch because I've got it sitting here and I can't use it for anything else. So I'm going to slice it off on an angle so we can get it close to the angle I need at the bottom, and then I'll start basically working on the top angle, and gradually with a grinder we'll be able to round this off and taper it out so that it'll fit neatly over the pipe. Right, after a bit of faffing around, you can kind of see, swap that over in that, you can see the angles that I've got. Now it's a bit of a weird angle, but that will weld in, so if I get the camera back far enough, that will weld in like that and triangulate everything. So let's get that tacked up and see if it's going to work down there. Okay, right? Oh fuck, wrong helmet.
Right?
It's alright, it's only a little bit. Okay, hold there. Just going to tack this in. Alright, that's in. Alright, I'm hoping that that is going to be strong enough once it's all bolted down and so on. So let's get this welded out.
And there we have all the pipes welded. We have the little triangulation gusset in and the header tank on. Time to start wrapping it so that we don't burn ourselves. So this is a fiberglass heat tape, normally used for exhausts and things like that, headers and so on. Easiest way to get this to wrap around curves and weird compound bends is to soak it with water, get it nice and wet, as you can see here, and then when you start wrapping it, the water squeezes out, eventually it disappears and it dries off completely, but it just helps you get a lot more flexibility out of the pipe when you're trying to put it around like strange bends. In this case, I'm starting off on the straight so that we can get nice even wraps, and then as I work further around, I end up going around the curves, and you can see the tape sort of still sticks quite nicely to the curve. It doesn't do any weird shapes and so on, and that allows you to get right the way to the end, and you can see the finished product ends up quite nice. It's nicely tight, no one's going to burn themselves, and we've used stainless zip ties so that we can hold this on so we don't ever have to worry about heat burning anything off. Oh, there we go, look at that, done, 2 pipes. So we're braced, we're heat wrapped, our silicone tubes are all T-clamped on. I still need to flush out the keel cooling pipes. That's a pretty straightforward and easy thing to do. I need to flush those out. I need to grab a couple of T-clamps for this pipe here. I need to fit a radiator cap. That's on order. It'll be here in about 2 weeks. But our little sensor has been plugged in. So we now have a potentially keel cooled genset. I need to pressure test these pipes as well. So one of the things that I do is essentially fill the genset with water, with coolant and all the normal stuff, and then run it and let the pressure build up within the genset, and then I can just fix any little leaks and stuff with the TIG welder, so it's not too hard. I was going to pressure test that tank, but I'm pretty confident in that tank at the top. I'm happy to just run that with the 9 psi or whatever the radiator cap creates. Yeah, I think I worked it out. It's about 27 hours of fabrication to get these 2 pipes done. It's disproportionately long amount of fabrication for 2 little pipes.
You got ice like summer sky. If you're smart, could kill or die. And now it starts to rain, so let's sing.